For more now on the international impact being felt of the Brexit vote, we have Brookings fellow Tom Wright joining us from Washington. He's also the director of the Project on International Order. Also rejoining us, she's been here all morning long, Hilary Kramer, the president and chief investment officer of A&G Capital. Again, thank you both for being here. Tom, I do want to begin with you and the roiling of the markets as this stunning vote came to pass. If nothing else, it had not been so pie in the sky, perhaps, was it thought. This was not a disaster scenario, if you will, that had been practiced for or theoretically been really considered.
That's right. The Remain campaign, I think, warned of economic turbulence and sort of fallout, but the Leave campaign said that it was fear-mongering and wasn't going to happen. We have yet to see really how this unfolds, obviously, in the coming weeks and months. But the signs this morning weren't positive. They suggested that the world markets really had assumed a Remain win and that there was huge uncertainty regarding a Leave and that there would be severe economic repercussions. And one critical question, I think, for the Leave campaign and for the victors of the referendum is whether or not this continues and gets worse, and then how that shapes the negotiation process with the rest of the EU, and then more including then also within the UK in terms of the new leadership battle once David Cameron steps down.
Hilary, he mentions the need now on the part of the UK to suddenly negotiate with the EU, and certainly in the months and perhaps years to come, what might remain of the EU. No easy feat.
The EU certainly could unravel, and Great Britain by the minute is unraveling. So the negotiation, I think everyone's going to want to come to that table. Do you know that now Ireland, Martin McGuinness wants to bring Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland together and unite Ireland and leave the United Kingdom? And that's on the tails of, as we know, of course, Scotland wanting to have independence and then go back and join the EU. I mean, so this is truly the tip of the iceberg, and it's really about an EU that can't work. It was founded, the EU, in 1951, and the changes to the EU and to these 28 states have just been too dramatic and radical for the EU paradigm.
American observers, if nothing else, have heard free trade become an issue here in our political cycle. Trade deals and the hassles therein in terms of the negotiation of them have been discussed. But when we talk about how difficult it is, and now what a mountain the UK will be faced to climb, just how difficult will it be to find its financial footing, especially as we hear the echoes of the president himself, who said back in April that the UK, if it leaves, will find itself at the back of the queue.
It's going to be extremely difficult for the United Kingdom because tariffs will be imposed. So there's 2 years to work out the negotiation, but the tariffs are going to come immediately. What happens to Rolls-Royce that supplies engines to Airbus? You have so many scenarios that have to be worked out. But the good news for us is, here in the United States, we can watch all of this, and we're not going to want Donald Trump to impose 45% tariffs on China, where we import $560 billion a year.
Meanwhile, Tom, it had been certainly a politically stable country, an economically stable country as well. But what to make now of what somebody earlier on the program called the constitutional crisis that's faced by the UK?
Yes, that's a very big challenge, and as Hilary said, in Northern Ireland and Scotland, there will be pressures. In Northern Ireland in particular, the peace process will come under pressure because of the possible reimposition of a customs border with the Republic of Ireland. In Scotland, the Scottish people will want a second referendum on independence. The new Conservative leader may deny them that and not agree to it, and so you may see a big sort of standoff there on whether or not they're allowed to have a second referendum once Britain leaves, whether that's in 2 years or a little bit more. And then, as you mentioned, all along it will be in the context of whether or not that they can agree new trading relations with the rest of the EU, which requires the agreement of all other EU member states and not just the UK. And so this will be a very sort of difficult period constitutionally and also economically.
You're nodding your head listening to Tom speak.
Yeah, because certainly the United Kingdom or Great Britain will not be. It'll be little Britain going forward. It's very difficult, and it is really like herding cats when it comes to this European Union, because indeed the point is that everyone has to agree, everyone has to come to the table, and no one wants to be imposed with any kind of regulation, and everyone has an opinion, because it's just like here in the United States. We have 50 states and we have 100 senators, and all those senators, are representing, but it works here in the United States, the interests, the manufacturing, the investments, and the people of those states. It doesn't work when it has to do with countries, because it's not the United States of Europe.
Well, and again, we've seen with the recent filibuster on the floor of the Senate, we saw the House taken over in a historic manner. We can understand said hurting, if nothing else, Hilary. And while it's impossible, Tom, to see this populist decision not through the prism of the American political context, if you will, we also need to look at the whole now of Europe. This is the first breakaway nation we're seeing, but this has now brought back into the conversation, certainly with the rise of populist ranks in countries like Sweden and Denmark, countries like France, certainly the congressional crisis we see in Italy. Who might be next, and what might that mean for the EU?
So Marine Le Pen has said that if there was a British exit from Europe, that she would propose a French referendum, and she's standing in the presidential election next year and is expected to make the second round. So I don't expect that she will win that election. But the fact that that's on the table in France will, I think, will be destabilizing. And then, as you mentioned, in other European countries, none of them are likely to jump into referendums anytime soon. But what will happen is that political parties in the opposition or populist movements in those countries will propose referendums and then lobby for them in the coming years. So I don't think we'll see sort of immediate repercussions in terms of other referendums maybe next year. But this could be setting in process a dynamic of disintegration that could unfold over the next decade. And I think that's what the sort of concern would be, especially if the economy of these countries deteriorates.
Hilary?
Really, we have to keep in mind that Northern Europe funds Southern Europe. So now we have these pressures. I actually think it won't take some time, because just like in the UK, think about what's happening. All these pressures are building, and it's just going to explode, because you have all this funding of the Southern European countries, and this is why you keep mentioning Denmark next. And then you have the imposition of not just immigration, but refugees, and in countries where unemployment continues to grow.
To say nothing of Alan Greenspan's comments that the development nations that we're talking about right now are aging rapidly.
Yes, and so you have that's demographics, and Alan Greenspan, yes, hit it perfectly. We have the demographics. You have entitlements that have to be paid out to those that are aging, and that's why if you look at the vote in the UK, you can see it was done based on not necessarily just socioeconomics, but demographics,
geopolitics. I mean, across the board. Again, Brookings fellow Tom Wright, we very much appreciate your time today, as yours, Hilary. I know you've been sticking around with us all morning long. Thank you both.